This play has a 95% chance to win in the Super Bowl, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is in this video. Now, let's first talk about the Super Bowl in general. So, when the Super Bowl comes into play here, there is a million different bets that you could do. And most people love to go in, they love to put in 20, 30 bets. They have a bunch of tickets like this, a stack of tickets for the Super Bowl. Here's the thing when it comes down to that. You could do all that work and put in 30 tickets with all these different props and everything like that, and then you could still end up losing money. So it's just a waste. Or you could put a whole bunch of tickets in like that and you turn just a small profit. My way of doing the Super Bowl, what I like to look at is I like to look at maybe a handful, maybe anywhere between 3 to 5 plays max. And most of those plays usually come in the player prop sector, not in the spread or the total, because it's very hard to find an edge in the spread or the total, especially in the Super Bowl, because they make sure that that line is so good that they're going to get action on both sides and there's not going to be any lopsided stuff whatsoever. So let's go through and let me discuss with you guys the plays that I like for the Super Bowl and what I'm going to be putting my money on. Now, one thing I do want to mention before we get into it is in the Super Bowl, people tend to look at trends when it comes to head-to-head trends. Well, in this matchup between the Seahawks and the Patriots, if you look at head-to-head trends, they've played each other 6 times, dating back almost 20 years now, almost getting there. But the thing is the teams that are playing in the Super Bowl right now are nowhere close to the teams that were playing against each other in the past, even the most recent matchup. The most recent matchup, Geno Smith was a quarterback for Seattle, and Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback for New England. So you can't take those into account, okay? When teams are drastically different and key players are drastically different, you cannot use that information to base what's going to happen in this matchup. Now, the first play I want to talk about is Sam Darnold, quarterback for Seattle. So what we're going to look at here is his passing yard. Now, to be able to get an accurate projection on passing yards, there's a simple formula that you could actually do. So you might want to write this stuff down, okay? Because what you can do is you could take the opponent's yards per completion, okay? That's how many yards they give up per completion per passing play. And what you do is you multiply that by the average amount of completions that quarterback gets per game. Once you do that, you will come up with an actual projection against that defense of what that quarterback can expect to get projection-wise. Now, the crazy thing is, we apply this to Sam Darnold. We look at New England. New England averages about 9.1 yards per completion. So they don't let big plays up. They're one of the best in the league at defending this, okay? And if we look at Sam Darnold's average completions per game over the season, he's at about 17. So if we multiply 9.1 and 17, we get a projection yardage of about 154 yards coming out of Sam Darnold. Now, based off that projection right there, what's the first thing you think, right? Under. Okay, we're going to look at the under on his passing yards. But where? What number do we have to look at? Because there has to be an edge somewhere along that line. Okay, and at the minus 110 line right now, which is I think about like 224.5 or whatnot, you don't have an edge there. Because like I said, in the Super Bowl, the sports books are very good at putting the lines at what they're supposed to be, as implied probability versus true probability. So it's very hard to find an edge in any Super Bowl plays. But there is one with Sam Darnold. Okay, so if we keep going up the ladder here, it's not going to be at the minus 110 line at 240, 224.5. It's not going to be at 250 either. We actually have to stretch this to 300 yards. So if we look at the under 300 yards, he has an implied probability of 82%, but he actually has a true probability of 85%. So it actually gives us about a 3% edge there, which, like I said, in the Super Bowl, any type of edge is a bonus. Those are the only type of plays that you want to play are plays that are going to give you an edge. And they're very, very slim in the Super Bowl. But we do have one here with Sam Darnold to go under 300 passing yards at a 3% edge, giving him a true probability of 85%. Now, if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys share the video because we're trying to get this information out to the most amount of people before the Super Bowl starts. Now, if you guys wait to the end of this video, I am going to discuss a prop that has a 95% true probability as well. But first, let's get to the running backs. All right, so what we're going to do here is we really can't look at Seattle's running backs, which is Kenneth Walker mainly now, because Charbonnet is not going to be playing. He's out. So we can't really use the stats for Kenneth Walker either because on the season, him and Charbonnet were about splitting carries, and you can't base anything really off of Ken Walker's stats there. So we have to move ourselves to Ramondre Stevenson on New England's side. Now, to get a projection on rushing yards from a running back, it's similar equation to what I just said about passing yards with like Sam Darnold, what you would do is you would take the rushing yards per attempt, okay? So that means how many yards they give up for every time that offense hands the ball off to their running back versus that defense. And you would take that and you multiply that by the average amount of carries that that running back is expected to get. Now, the funny thing is when you put these stats together for Ramondre Stevenson, the number comes out drastically low. All right, so what it is it comes out to 3.8 yards per carry that Seattle gives up. And the average the average carries per game that Ramondre Stevenson is averaging throughout the season is 7.64. But that's because at one point, him and Travion Henderson were split carries. Whereas it seems right now, it seems like Stevenson is completely taken over. And he is going to be the lead running back there. Henderson might get a couple carries here and there, but Stevenson should get the bulk of the carries. So when we do a projection there, using those two numbers, we get Ramondre Stevenson for 30 yards. Now, we have to adjust that number a little bit for the attempts because he's going to get more attempts than 7. That's for sure. He's definitely going to get more attempts than 7. So what we like to do there is kind of base it off the last couple of games. Now, the last game, you can't really base it off because the weather was so bad that they just wanted to hand the ball off most of the time. So he had 25 carries in that game, but you can't really take that into account because of the weather conditions in that game. It's not going to be like that for the Super Bowl, so they're not going to have to run the ball so many times or hand that ball off so many times. So if we just run our numbers between 10 to 12 carries even here, we still are going to land in that area of like 50 yards for Stevenson. Now, again, we have to climb the ladder here. Because the reason why is we're going to look at the under here. We're going to climb the ladder to find the edge. The edge is not going to be at 50 yards. It's not going to be at 60 yards. The edge is actually going to lie at the under 80-yard mark, where Stevenson has an implied probability of 84% to go under 80 yards rushing, but actually has a true probability percentage of 88% to go under, thus giving ourselves a 4% edge there. Okay, so that is another edge play that we were able to find, is Ramondre Stevenson under 80 yards rushing. Now, before we get to the 95% play in the Super Bowl, if you guys want all my strategies that aren't on YouTube, and you guys also want the picks sent to you every single day, make sure you guys click the link in the description. Very simple. You want to work with me, click the link in the description. Now let's go ahead and talk about that 95% play. So what we're going to do is we looked at Sam Darnold. We're going to flip this and we're going to look at Drake May. All right, Drake May now is going against, again, one of the top passing defenses in the league. They're both top passing defenses on both sides of the ball. Now, if we plug our equation in that we use for Darnold into the concept for Drake May as well, this is what we're going to get. So average completions that he's been able to get throughout the season, 17.7. Now, the average yards per completion that Seattle gives us is one of the best as well, just like New England, is 9.2. And that gives a projection of 162 yards. So both QBs here have a really low projection on yardage to get through the air, which is understandable because they're going against two of the top defenses against the pass. But again, we have to climb that same exact ladder again to find where Drake May gets an edge at here. And we have to climb that same exact ladder all the way up to 300 yards once again. Because at 300 yards, we have an implied probability of 88%. But Drake May's true probability to go under 300 yards is actually 95%. He only surpassed that one time this year, and he was going against the Ravens' atrocious secondary that he was able to torch. So we get a 7% probability there, edge-wise, to be able to get Drake May to go under 300 passing yards. Now, these plays aren't going to be the most entertaining plays, right? But like I've said before, fun doesn't always equal profit, all right? You're hoping that these quarterbacks do absolutely nothing and the running back does absolutely nothing. That's what you're hoping for in the Super Bowl. And you do, you win, right? Might not be the best thing, might not be the most fun thing, but like I said, fun doesn't always equal profit, and we're here to make money. We're not here just to have fun.